Welcome to Starbound. I'm Daniel Pierce, and I'm going to be your narrator today. Before we begin, though, we got some pretty exciting news. Our official website is now up and running at starbounduniverse.com. There, you can explore our channels, discover new series, and, get to know your narrators, and pick up exclusive merch to support us. If you sign up for our newsletter, you get written versions of our stories in your inbox every week, along with character lore descriptions and sneak peeks into new series. Check out the description for the link, or just head over to starbounduniverse.com. Now, let's get into today's story. Captain Zurov had just ordered a full scan of the mysterious human battleship, and regretted it immediately. Instead of simply detecting a vessel teeming with Death Worlder life signatures, he and his crew had triggered some kind of response. Now, their tiny spaceship was being dragged toward a massive, gaping maw. Victim of an intense gravitational field that overwhelmed the thrusters. It looked like they were about to meet those Death Worlders face to face. The bridge of the Gentle Wing erupted in a chaotic mess of alarm chirps and panic squawks. Through his augmentation lenses, thin crystalline discs that sat perfectly over his purple eyes, Zorav watched their doom approach with horrifying clarity. The virtual interface painted their predicament in merciless detail. Trajectory lines showed their inevitable path into the behemoth's docking bay. Force vectors displayed their useless engine output against the overwhelming pull. And worst of all, the hull transparency mode made it seem as though nothing stood between them and the void except the human ship's terrible embrace. Zurov's yellow feathers ruffled involuntarily, his green head crest flaring in distress. The Leorians had tried, ancestors knew they had tried, to develop proper holographic displays like the other spacefaring species. But something about the avian neural pathways, evolved for three-dimensional flight in low gravity, had made standard holograms nauseating and disorienting. After losing 3 test pilots to mistakes caused by holographic interfaces, they'd settled for augmented reality overlays. Now, the very technology that kept them competitive in the galactic community was making their terror infinitely worse. Through the transparent hull, they could see every detail of their capture. The massive docking bay doors spreading wider like the maw of some cosmic predator. The sharp shapes of the human ship's hull plating growing larger with each passing second. The faint shimmer of what could only be weapons emplacements tracking their movement.
"This is your fault!"
Navigator Trevere's voice cracked, his short beak clicking rapidly in distress. The male Leorian's talons scraped against the console as he frantically tried to override the gravitational pull.
"You overrided the scan! You provoked them!"
It was a collective decision. Communications Officer Azy interjected, though her tone carried no defense of the captain, merely a statement of fact. Her feathers, usually pristine and carefully groomed, were disheveled with fear. We all agreed to gather intelligence on the human vessel. Zorav watched through his lenses as their ship crossed the threshold into the docking bay. The augmented reality showed energy fields snapping into place behind them, containment fields his tactical subordinates informed him. They were trapped. The captain felt his small nostrils flare with rapid breathing as he noticed Azy frantically working her station. "Human vessel, this is the Leorian scout ship Gentle Wing." She transmitted, her voice remarkably steady despite the tremor in her tail feathers. "We apologize for our unauthorized scan. It was not meant as an act of aggression. We beg for your mercy," and she hadn't asked permission to transmit this message. The realization struck Zurav with a mixture of indignation and relief. Protocol demanded she clear all communications with hostile vessels through him first. But as he looked around the bridge, he saw it in every pair of purple eyes that met his, or rather, didn't meet his. They blamed him. The sensor operator kept her gaze fixed on her readings. The helm officer stared determinedly at his useless controls. Even his executive officer seemed to find the deck plating fascinating. The air itself felt heavy with their judgment, their fear crystallizing into resentment toward the one who had given the order that presumably doomed them all. He couldn't blame AZ for acting independently. Right now, if he ordered them to prepare for boarding, would they even obey? Or would they continue their frantic, futile attempts to escape, ignoring the captain who had led them to this fate? The gentle wings settled onto the docking bay floor with a gentle thump that seemed to mock their panic. Through the transparent overlay, Zorav could see the massive space around them, large enough to hold a dozen ships their size. The walls were lined with what could only be weapons lockers, emergency equipment, and ancestors knew what other implements of destruction the Death Worlders might employ.
We're going to die,
Trevere whispered, and then louder.
We're going to die. We're going to die!
The navigator's augmentation lenses flickered erratically as his eyes darted around wildly. His talons fumbled at his equipment belt, and suddenly there was a plasma pistol in his grip.
Better to die by our own talons than let the Death Worlders tear us apart!
The weapon rose to his own head, and for a moment the bridge froze in horror. Then sensor operator Keelix lunged from her station. Despite being unarmed and smaller than Trevere, desperation gave her strength. She crashed into the navigator, her wings spreading to knock him off balance. They tumbled to the deck, and entangled of yellow feathers and frantic squawks.
Let me go!
Trevere shrieked, trying to angle the weapon back toward himself.
You don't know what they'll do to us! The stories! The broadcast! Death Warders don't take prisoners! They take prey!
Keelix wrapped her wings around his arm, using her flight muscles, weak in standard gravity but still present, to force the weapon away. Other crew members rushed to help, and together they wrestled the plasma pistol from Trevere's grip. The navigator collapsed into terrified chirps, curling into himself on the deck. The sight of the navigator's breakdown crystallized something in Zorav's mind. He was the captain. He had given the order that brought them here. Whatever happened next, it was his responsibility to face it.
I'll go,
he announced, his voice cutting through the panic. Every head turned to him, purple eyes wide with disbelief.
I'll meet the Death Worlders. Alone.
Captain, AZ began, but he raised a wing to silence her.
This is my responsibility.
He moved toward the equipment locker, pulling out an atmospheric analyzer. The device felt impossibly heavy in his talons.
Continue trying to establish communication. If they kill me, perhaps it will satisfy their need for vengeance.
The crew watched in stunned silence as their captain approached the hatch. Some looked relieved, better him than them. Others seemed ashamed at that very relief. Keelix helped Trevere to a chair, the navigator's eyes tracking Zorav's movement with a mixture of horror and gratitude. Zorav held the atmospheric analyzer to the hatch seal, watching the readings populate on his lens display. Oxygen-nitrogen mix, acceptable pressure, no immediately lethal pathogens detected. Not that it mattered. The Death Worlders on the other side were a far greater threat than any atmospheric hazard. His wing hesitated on the hatch controls. Through his augmentation, he could see the crew's reflections in the polished metal, a tableau of terror and anticipation. AZ was still at her station, repeatedly broadcasting their surrender and apologies to the human ship that remained ominously silent. The others had unconsciously grouped together, as their distant ancestors might have flocked together when faced with a predator. The hatch cycled open with a long hiss. The docking bay beyond was even more massive than it had appeared through their hole. Overhead lighting created a noonday brilliance that made Zorav's eyes water, clearly designed for species that had evolved under harsher suns. The space could have easily accommodated ships 10 times the size of the Gentle Wing. Various mechanical arms and loading equipment lined the walls along what looked like weapons emplacements covered by protective shrouds. And approaching from across that vast space was a single figure. A human. Zorav's mind raced through every protocol he had learned about first contact scenarios. The Galactic Council had extensive procedures for peaceful meetings between species, frameworks for establishing communication, guidelines for preventing misunderstandings. But those assumed both parties wanted peace. What protocol existed for when you offended a Death Worlder species? When you'd scanned the warship without permission and been captured as a result? He remembered fragments of publicly available information about humans, bipedal, mammalian, persistence predators on their home world, relatively new to the galactic scene but had already established themselves as formidable warriors. They valued hierarchy and shows of strength. Perhaps if he showed proper submission, demonstrated that Liarians posed no threat. The human stopped 3 meters away, and Zorav got his first close look at one of the galaxy's most feared species. He was tall, at least a full head taller than Zorav, with broad shoulders and a bipedal stance that somehow managed to look both casual and ready for violence. His skin was a pale pink brown with darker hairs on his head, and this human wore a uniform of some kind, crisp and clean, with various insignia that probably denoted rank or speciality. Zorav prepared to bow, to abase himself, to offer formal apologies and whatever compensation might appease this Death Worlder. He opened his beak to speak. The human's mouth stretched wide, revealing a horrifying array of white teeth. Zorav's feathers stood on end at the threat display, but then the human spoke.
Welcome aboard! I'm Roger, guest services officer for the Milky Way cruise ship.
The human's voice was cheerful, enthusiastic even.
You're our first Liarian guest. Oh, this is so exciting. Wait until the captain hears about this. We've been hoping to attract more avian species ever since we installed the zero-G swimming pools. Now, if you just follow me, I'll get you checked in and give you the full tour. Oh, the casino deck is particularly popular. Though I should mention, the restaurant on Deck 12 just added a wonderful selection of sea-based cuisines that your species might enjoy.
Zorav stood frozen, his mind struggling to process the words. Guest services, cruise ship. The human, Roger, continued talking, seemingly oblivious to Zorav's terror.
Is your whole crew coming? Excellent. The more the merrier. We have plenty of cabins available. Oh, and don't worry about the docking procedure. I know the auto capture may be a bit startling for first-timers, but it's really the safest way to bring ships aboard while we're traveling at cruise velocity.
Zorav's translator struggled with his stammering chirps. This is a warship. You captured us. Roger's expression shifted to confusion.
Warship? No. You got it all wrong. This is a civilian vessel. The Milky Way is one of the galaxy's premier cruise ships. 3 full circuits of the galaxy per standard year, with stops at all the major tourist destinations.
He paused, his head tilting.
Why would you think you were captured?
We received your docking request and brought you in. Standard procedure.
We didn't send a docking request, Zorav managed. We scanned you. Right, the automated greeting protocol. When a ship scans us, our systems interrupt it as interest in booking passage, so we transmit our availabilities and rates. Your ship's computer must have auto-accepted the invitation. Happens all the time for first-time cruisers. Now, shall we get the rest of your crew? I'm sure they're eager to start their vacation.
The miscommunication was so profound that Zorav couldn't form words. He stood there, watching the human's expectant expression, trying to reconcile the cheerful hospitality with everything he knew about Death Worlders. Behind him, he heard Talons on deck plating as his crew, unable to bear the suspense, began emerging from the ship.
Captain? Azy's voice was barely a whisper. What's happening? I believe there's been a misunderstanding, Zorov said slowly. Roger's face lit up at the sight of more Liarians. Wonderful! Come on out, everyone. Don't be shy. I know space travel can be stressful. The Milky Way prides itself on making every species feel welcome. Trevere, the navigator, took one look at the enthusiastic human and fainted. Minutes later, Zurov's augmented display informed him it had been exactly 10 minutes since their capture. The entire crew found themselves standing on the bridge of the human ship. The journey through the corridors had been surreal. Roger chattering constantly about amenities and entertainment options, while the Liarians huddled together, jumping at every distant sound. The bridge itself defied everything Zurov expected from a warship. Instead of stark military design, it had an almost welcoming atmosphere. The display showed star charts and navigation data, yes, but also passenger manifest, entertainment schedules, and what looked like a running tally of complimentary beverages served. Crew members of various species worked at stations, and while many were human, Zurov spotted others he couldn't immediately identify. The terror his crew felt was crystal clear, made worse by the civilized behavior of the Death Worlders. Azy leaned close, her voice barely audible. Why are they pretending? What kind of psychological torture is this? Maybe they fatten up their prey first, another crew member whispered. Make us comfortable for the... Welcome to the bridge. A new human approached, this one wearing more elaborate insignia. He was older than Roger, with gray streaking his hair and lines around his eyes that Zurov couldn't interpret. I'm Captain William Hartman. I understand there's been some confusion about your arrival. The human captain's demeanor was professional but warm, completely at odds with the military bearings Zurov expected. He found himself automatically straightening one captain to another, even as his instincts screamed danger. Captain Hartman, Zurov began carefully. I must apologize for all unauthorized scan of your vessel. We didn't mean any offense. Captain Hartman waved a hand dismissively. No offense taken. These things happen, especially on the cruise's third circuit. We've had all sorts of mix-ups. Last month, a Vorthan diplomatic courier accidentally docked thinking we were a refueling station. Ended up staying 2 weeks once they discovered the spa. He smiled, and unlike Roger's tooth display, this seemed less threatening somehow. I've reviewed the logs. Our automated systems did indeed interpret your scan as a book inquiry. The fault is ours for not updating the protocol recognition software. But all the Death Worlder species, Zurov couldn't help but say. All scans showed dozens of predator species aboard. Captain Hartman's expression shifted slightly. We don't use that term here, Captain Zurov. The Milky Way is a place where all species can come together to enjoy themselves, to socialize, to make new friends. We leave the old stereotypes and prejudices at the airlock. The weapons, Keelix piped, emboldened by the human's calm demeanor. We saw weapons emplacements. Defensive systems only, Captain Hartman assured them. Space travel has its dangers. Pirates, cosmic phenomena, the occasional aggressive wildfire near certain tourist destinations. We take our passengers' safety seriously. But inside the ship, this is a place of peace and enjoyment. You're truly not a warship? Zurov asked, still struggling to believe. Far from it. We're a cruise ship, Captain. A place for relaxation, entertainment, and interspecies cultural exchange. He paused, studying the terrified Liarians with surprisingly perceptive eyes. I understand. This must be overwhelming. Your species hasn't had much contact with humans or many of the other species aboard. Tell you what, as an apology for the confusion, I'd like to offer your entire crew complimentary passes for the remainder of this circuit. Roger would be happy to give you a tour, show you what we have to offer. No obligations, of course. If you prefer, we can arrange for your immediate departure at the next port. No! The word came from Azy, surprising everyone, including herself. She ruffled her feathers nervously. I mean, we've come this far. It would be educational to see more. I agree, Keelix added quietly, for scientific purposes. Trevere, who had been revived and was now clinging to a support beam, squawked in protest.
Are you all insane? They're Death Welders. They're probably planning to eat us.
Mr. Trevere, Captain Hartman said gently, our restaurants serve a wide variety of cuisines to accommodate all dietary needs. No passenger has ever been on the menu. It's just... Zorav looked at his crew, seeing curiosity beginning to war with fear in their eyes. This is all very unusual. Well, the best adventures usually are, Roger chimed in. Come on, let me just show you the pool deck. I think you'll be amazed. Half an hour later, 32 minutes according to Zorav's display, the Liarian crew stood on an observation balcony overlooking the pool deck. And amazed was an understatement. Roger hadn't stopped talking once during their journey through the ship, pointing out features and amenities with infectious enthusiasm. The pool deck sprawled before them like an aquatic paradise. Multiple pools of varying depths and temperatures dotted the space, some with artificial waves, others calm as mirrors. What truly stunned the Liarians, however, were the occupants. In the largest pool, humans and Briarians, massive, muscular beings known for their warrior culture, were engaged in what happened to be a competitive game involving a ball and floating goals. They laughed and shouted good-naturedly, working in mixed teams with no sign of aggression such species were known for.
Impossible,
Trevere whispered. Near the artificial beach area, scaled beings with prominent teeth and claws, Reptari, if Zorav's species recognition was correct, lounged under heating lamps, their usually territorial nature nowhere in evidence as they shared the space with various mammalian species. But what truly made Zorav's feathers stand on end was the sight of the Farir, the feline species legendary for their predatory nature and leadership of the feline faction that terrified half the galaxy. Were playing in a mixed group with humans and what looked like bovons, large herbivorous mammals with impressive horns. They were sharing drinks, their laughter carrying across the deck as they engaged in some form of group game that involved diving for colored rings. They're playing together, Azy said, her voice filled with wonder. Predators and prey, Death Welders and... Just people on vacation, Roger finished cheerfully. That's the magic of the Milky Way. Everyone leaves their conflicts at the door. Hard to maintain old grudges when you're sharing a drink and watching stars go by. Zorav watched a human male splash a female Furier, who responded by playfully pouncing into the water, sending up a great spray that made nearby Reptari hiss in mock annoyance. His entire worldview, carefully constructed through years of military training and species isolation, began to crack. Perhaps they had scanned something far more dangerous than a battleship. They'd found a place where the impossible happened daily, where sworn enemies became vacation friends, where Death Worlders weren't deadly at all. So, who wants to try the water slide?
I'll try it,
Azy announced suddenly, her voice cutting through the stunned silence of the observation deck. Every Liarian head swiveled toward her in disbelief. Zorav's crest flattened against his skull in shock as his communications officer stepped forward, her purple eyes fixed on the spiraling water slide that twisted from a platform high above down to the main pool. Azy, he began, but she was already moving toward Roger, who practically bounced with excitement. Ah, excellent choice. The cosmic spiral is one of our most popular attractions. And don't worry about your little feathers. We have full-body dryers on the exit platform. I'll have you fluffed up in no time. My feathers will get soaked, Azy said, but it wasn't a protest, more like someone acknowledging that they were about to do something wonderfully foolish. On our world, We fly. We don't... Trust me, Roger said with that tooth-bearing grin that was starting to seem less threatening. Sliding is just like flying, except gravity does all the work. The crew watched in horrified fascination as their communications officer followed the human toward the slide entrance. Zurab found himself pressing against the observation window, his augmented display automatically calculating trajectories and speed, none of which made him feel better about watching one of his crew members willingly enter a tube of rushing water.
Is this real?
Trevere's voice was quiet, his talons gripping the railing so tightly that Zurab worried he might damage it.
Are we truly seeing AZ, sensible, rule-following AZ, about to play in water with Death Worlders?
On the platform below, AZ stood at the slide entrance, water rushing past her talons. A human attendant, because apparently humans had attendants for their water tubes, was explaining something about keeping her wings tucked. Around the pool, various species had noticed the new arrival. Instead of the predatory interest Zurab expected, he saw curiosity, encouragement, and what looked like a furrier actually applauding with its paws.
Cross your wings over your chest,
the attendant said.
Tail feathers straight back, and remember, scream if you want to. It's half the fun.
AZ sat at the slide's entrance, water immediately soaking into her yellow plumage. For a moment, she looked up at the observation deck, and Zurab could see the wild mix of terror and exhilaration in her eyes. Then she pushed off. The scream that echoed through the tube wasn't fear. It was pure, unbridled joy. The crew watched their communications officer spiral down the transparent sections of the slide, water streaming from her feathers, her crest fully extended in what their species recognized as delight. She shot out of the exit tube in an explosion of spray, skipping across the pool's surface like a stone before coming to rest in the shallow end. She emerged, sputtering and laughing, actually laughing, as Roger waded in to help her stand.
That was... Can I go again? Is she compromised?
Keelix asked.
Did they drug the water?
But Zurab could see the truth in AZ's eyes as she looked up at them, water dripping from every feather. She wasn't drugged or coerced. She was having fun. Pure, simple fun in a pool full of species that could theoretically eat her whole.
Come on down,
AZ called up to them.
The water's actually quite pleasant, and the humans have this thing called a lazy river that...
Marketing, Trevere muttered. But even he seemed slightly shaken by the genuine joy in her voice.
This is all just marketing, right, Captain? They're all just trying to sell us something.
Roger, who had somehow appeared back on the observation deck while leaving AZ to explore the pools, beamed at them.
Well, of course we are. We're selling the vacation of a lifetime. Speaking of which, while your friend drives off down there, why don't I show you the casino deck?
20 minutes later, Zurab's computer informed him they were standing at the entrance to what could only be described as a glittering cave of lights and sounds. AZ had rejoined them, her feathers dried and refluffed by technology she couldn't stop praising, a towel draped over her body like a cape of honor.
The Stardust Casino,
Roger announced, gesturing at the vast space before them. Open 26 hours a day. We added extra 2 hours to accommodate species from longer rotation planets. Every game of chance known to the galaxy, plus a few we invented ourselves. The same impossible mixing of species was evident here. A table of Briarians played what looked like cards with a human dealer, their massive frames making the chairs look comically small. A group of Reptari clustered around some sort of wheel game, hissing excitedly as it spun. And there, Zurab did a double take, was a furrier teaching a human how to play a complicated-looking dice game, both of them laughing as the dice scattered across the table.
This is insane,
Trevere said flatly.
Predators don't play games. They don't...
They do here, Roger said cheerfully. Everyone's just another tourist trying to beat the house. Speaking of which, He produced a small chip from seemingly nowhere, pressing it into Trevere's reluctant talon.
First-time visitor bonus. 20 credits to try any game you like.
I don't gamble, Trevere said immediately.
Neither did the Vorthan ambassador, Roger replied. Now, he's our reigning champion at poker. Just one game. What could it hurt?
What followed was perhaps the most surreal argument Zurov had ever witnessed. His panicked navigator, who just hours ago had tried to end his own life rather than face Deathworlders, was now being gently badgered by a human about the statistical probabilities of various casino games. Roger countered every objection with enthusiasm, every fear with a fun fact, every protest with an offer of a different game that might be more appealing. The slots are basically just pretty lights, Trevere said weakly, his resistance crumbling.
Yeah, pretty licenses sometimes give you money,
Roger corrected.
And the Jupiter Jackpot machine has a bonus round where you get to pilot a little spaceship through an asteroid field. Very popular with avian species, actually. Hand-eye coordination translates pretty well.
I suppose one game. Zorav watched in disbelief as Trevere approached what Roger called a slot machine, a device covered in bright colors and promises of fortune. The navigator inserted his chip with the caution of someone defusing a bomb, then pulled the lever. Lights exploded across the screen, cheerful music played, virtual coins rained down, and the machine announced, "Luck bonus!" in various languages. I won? Trevere stared at the credit display. I won?
First pull, too!
Roger clapped him on the back, a gesture that should have sent the Liarian into a panic, but instead just made him puff up with pride.
Try another. A cosmic cascade machine over there has a 94% payout rate.
Within minutes, Trevere had forgotten his terror entirely. He moved from machine to machine, clutching his growing collection of chips, occasionally letting out excited chirps when he hit a winning combination. When a Briarian at the next machine over gave him advice about timing his pulls, Trevere actually thanked the massive predator without a trace of fear. "I've never seen him like this," Azy murmured to Zurov, still damp from her pool adventures. "He's actually enjoying himself." "Don't get too close to the reptile," Trevere called out to a crew member who had wandered near a scaled patron. Then, without missing a beat, he added, "They're on a hot streak and you don't want to break their concentration. Very superstitious about their winning streaks, Roger says." The fact that Trevere was now parroting human gaming advice about Deathworlder species as if it were perfectly normal made Zurov question reality itself. 1 hour later, 63 minutes his display noted with mechanical accuracy, the entire Liarian crew sat in what Roger had called the Sunrise Restaurant, one of apparently dozens of dining establishments aboard the cruise ship. The view through the massive windows showed stars streaming by, but Zurov's attention was entirely captured by the plate before him. "Sunflower seeds from Earth," Roger explained, setting down another dish. "These are pumpkin seeds from the same planet. Oh, and these are Altarian pine nuts." Bit of a misnomer since they're not really from pines at all, but they're absolutely delicious roasted with a bit of sea salt. The variety was overwhelming. Seeds from across the galaxy, prepared in ways the Liarians had never imagined. Some were roasted, others candied. A few fermented in ways that created entirely new flavors. There were seed-based breads, seed-crusted proteins for those who ate such things, and even something called seed butter that Azy was spreading on a cracker with an expression of religious revelation. "And this," Roger said, producing a small bowl with a flourish.
"It's our chef's special blend. 7 different seeds from 7 different worlds. Each one toasted to perfection and mixed with a secret spice blend. We're staying," Trevere announced suddenly, his beak full of some kind of honey-coated seed cluster. Captain, we have to accept Captain Hartman's offer. We have to stay." Zurov nearly choked on a perfectly roasted Turan almond. "Trevere, we're on duty. We have a mission to..." "To what?"
Trevere's eyes were bright, almost manic. To patrol empty space? To run from every ship that might have a predator species aboard? Captain, I won 42 credits. The Briarian at the diamond slots said I have natural talent. And tomorrow, there's a tournament. You're traumatized, Zorov said weakly. This morning you tried...
This morning I was an idiot,
Trevere interrupted, which was shocking enough since he'd never contradicted a superior officer before. Captain, when will we ever get another chance like this? To see the galaxy, to try Earth's hazelnuts. He held up the mentioned nut like it was a precious gem. He has a point, Keelix added. For cultural research purposes, my preliminary observations of interspecies social dynamics here could fill several academic papers. I want to try the zero-gravity pool, AZ said dreamily. Roger says they have one where you can swim in 3 dimensions, like flying in water. The mission, Zorov began, can't wait. His executive officer, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke. Captain, when was the last time any of us took leave? When was the last time we did anything but flee at the first sign of a carnivore species? But the Death Welders, Zorov protested, even as he found himself reaching for another seed. Are they? AZ asked. Or is that just what we call them because we're afraid? Look around, Captain. I mean, really look. Zorov did. At the next table, a mix of group species shared what looked like a birthday celebration, complete with a cake that somehow accommodated multiple dietary requirements. Near the window, a human elder was showing a young Riptari how to fold a napkin into the shape of a flower. At the bar, a Furier and a Bovan were toasting each other with drinks that glowed different colors. Try the sunflower seeds, Keelix suggested gently, pushing the bowl toward him. Just try them. Zorov picked up a single seed, studying it. Such a simple thing. A seed from Earth, the human homeworld, a place he had been taught to fear since he had first learned of spacefaring predators. He placed it in his beak, cracked it open with the skill his species had developed over millennia. The flavor was perfect, nutty, slightly salty, with an earthiness that he could not explain. It was different from any seed on his homeworld, yet somehow exactly what a seed should taste like. Oh, he said quietly. Captain? AZ leaned forward. Zorov looked at his crew. AZ, still glowing from her pool adventure, Trevere, clutching his casino chips and already planning his next gaming session, Keelix, taking notes on her datapad about social dynamics while absently munching on something called a chia pudding. His entire crew transformed in just hours from terrified prey animals into tourists. We'll file a report, he heard himself saying, accidentally captured by a Death Welder vessel, held for safety assessment. Too dangerous to attempt escape. Really? AZ's crest shot up in delight. Really? Zorov reached for another sunflower seed, then another. It would be irresponsible to leave without a full assessment of the situation. We might be here for some time. The full cruise circuit is 3 months, Roger offered helpfully, though many guests extend their stay. The pool, AZ sighed happily. I'm going back to the pool first thing tomorrow. After the casino tournament, Trevere corrected. You promised to be my moral support. What about you, Captain? Keelix asked. What do you want to try? Zorov looked down at the menu Roger had left, his eyes scanning the seed section. There were dozens of varieties he had never heard of, preparations he couldn't even imagine, each one a small adventure, a tiny rebellion against everything he had been taught about the dangers of the galaxy. Everything, he admitted. I want to try everything. Roger beamed, that human expression Zorov was beginning to recognize as genuine happiness, rather than a threat display.
Now that's the spirit. Wait until you see tomorrow's breakfast buffet. We just got a shipment of Andromedon pearl seeds that are absolutely divine with morning nectar.
As his crew chattered excitedly about their plans, pools and casinos and restaurants and things called spa treatments that AZ was insisting they all try, Captain Zorov reached for his fifth variety of seed. He had been so wrong, he realized. They hadn't scanned a battleship at all. They had discovered something far more powerful, a place where fear transformed into curiosity, where predator and prey were outdated concepts, where a terrified Liarian could become a gambling enthusiast in the span of an hour, a place where even the most unlikely species could find common ground over something as simple as a perfectly roasted seed. "Roger," he called out as the human passed by their table. "About that offer of complimentary passes from Captain Hartman." The human's grin widened.
Captain, I thought you'd never ask.